Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. As you're all probably aware by now, Wuthering Waves has been nominated for what many consider to be the Mobile Game of the Year award from the Game Awards. This is actually titled the Best Mobile Game, but that's essentially what it means whenever you have only one of these a year. And Wuthering Waves is up in competition with a couple of other titles. Think like Sonic, Uma Musume. People think that there's a decent amount of competition, but I'm gonna be honest over here. What I wanted to do today was take a look at just some of the facts, some of the details surrounding this upcoming set of Game Awards, and just take a look at the surrounding space when it comes to other nominations, the overall success of the game on other platforms, and just build a bit of a case for why individuals might be pleasantly surprised when we do get the announcement for who the actual winner of this award is next week. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Let's start breaking it all down and just take a look at all of the amazing things that this game has accomplished. And I'll start with actually the most recent one first. The Wuthering Waves subreddit has been a good source of news over the past couple of days, and one of the bits and pieces of news that I managed to see on one of my days off was the fact that the game actually managed to reach overwhelmingly positive on its recent reviews, I do believe for potentially the first time ever. And so we all know that when it comes to Steam, you get a normie-ass audience whenever you have games on here. Gacha games on Steam are considered some of the ones that have the lowest overall ratings, simply due to the fact that gacha as a monetization platform is something that massively turns off a lot of traditionally Western players. And to see a gacha game with, you know, monetization mechanics that a lot of individuals might not be very happy with do so well on a primarily Western platform is absolutely insane. And then when you go ahead and you actually start looking into the reviews and you start looking into the comments over here, well, guys, I'm gonna be real, this is where stuff starts getting really interesting. Let me go ahead and see if I can look at the overall reviews. Someone who's never been into the anime universe, definitely worth playing gacha game. Basically, the idea over here is that from all of the recent comments that you're seeing, a lot of these individuals are just players that typically go for regular types of games. And this game is one that's able to stand out despite the fact that it's a gacha and despite the relatively low reputation that gacha games seem to have in the space. And I would just say that this level of sort of like public approval, this sort of like public representation that you're seeing over here to such a high degree that all of the recent reviews have been overwhelmingly positive, well, I'm just gonna be honest, guys. It is something that I feel like no other gacha game has really done on this platform. And I would be extremely happy to be proven wrong and to be linked and shown another like Steam review page, another Steam game on here that's been able to achieve similar results. I just don't think it's happened. And with games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and ZZZ not on Steam, I would officially say that Wuthering Waves is now the game, the gacha game, that has broken the normie barrier. And isn't breaking the normie barrier something that seems to be pretty prevalent in the games that manage to get this type of award? Makes a lot of sense to me. So that's only the first little bit of evidence that we got going over here. Now let's go ahead and take a look at representation on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. And that's actually going to be PlayStation JP. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, PlayStation JP has decided to go ahead and announce some awards of their own. And as you can see over here, it can be a little bit difficult to recognize Wuthering Waves because you don't have Wuthering Waves in here, but they're actually going to be up for the Partner Award over here, and then they're going to be up competing with User's Choice down here. And so this is what I really consider to be one of the strongest points of representation. It's the fact that this game is popping up in User's Choice. And you can see other games up here from relatively popular franchises not really getting that treatment. Look who's down here. You got Silent Hill. Guys, do keep in mind, Silent Hill is like made by Japanese people. So this is like, in a way for them, like if you're not voting a game like this up there, that's a little bit sus, right? As like PlayStation. Then you got Expedition 33, naturally makes sense. I feel like I should know this one, but it's like it's too there's literally too much Japanese. Like I feel like I should know that one. Maybe somebody knows what that one is, but I can't even tell. I can't even tell from that little box that I'm seeing over there. But that's another game. And then you got Monster Hunter Wilds. Oh, that's Dynasty Warriors? Okay, that's fair, right? Then you got Monster Hunter Wilds. Wuthering Waves, Dynasty Warriors, Silent Hill, and Expedition 33. I'm not gonna lie, guys. That's those are all some of the most well-known franchises I've ever known. These three over here. And then you got Expedition 33, which is a natural masterclass of its own. And then you got Wuthering Waves. This is some of the best peerage you can have as a game, is to be compared to these titles. And then you got other titles over here. You got Elden Ring, you got Path of Exile, you got Metal Gear Solid, and of course Silent Hill again. Yeah, I don't really know, man. It's looking pretty good, and the amount of public recognition that we're seeing on the Western side, where they hate gacha, and on the JP side, where they make really, really, really good non-gacha games. And Wuthering Waves is on top in both regions. So this isn't just a, like, regional phenomenon in JP or global, or sorry, in the West. It is a global phenomenon that is hitting every single part of the globe. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at something that actually happened a couple of weeks ago, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't make a video on it, but I probably should have. But that was Wuthering Waves winning the best ongoing game of 2025 in Google's Mobile Game Awards. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Google decided to hand out this title, Best Ongoing Game, not to Genshin Impact, not to Zenless Zone Zero, not to Honkai Star Rail, not to any other gacha game except Wuthering Waves for the year 2025. Taking into account all those updates, taking into account probably all the quality of life, taking into account all the ways that the player experience has been improved. Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, remember when the developers decided to release this fucking feature out of the blue. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the addition of features like this, alongside, right, the high quality of the game's animation, stories, so on and so forth, all of that stuff probably contributes into the rating over here, because I'm certain that they take into account the feedback of probably players of the game itself. And a game like this, once again, a Chinese gacha game, knowing the damage that Chinese gacha games have done to the reputation of Chinese gacha games across the globe. Remember that these mobile game awards, guys, this is on a global rating. This takes into account all of that negative stigma that gets built up across the globe. And there's a reason why, ladies and gentlemen, Wuthering Waves is a 4. Oh shit, I almost spilled all my coffee everywhere. Oh, it's like Hoyoverse knew I was about to start saying some shit. Guys, you wanna take a look at what all the other Hoyoverse games look like on the Google Play Store? That's a whopping 3.5 for Zenless Zone Zero. Let's look up Honkai Star Rail. Oh, get him. A whopping 3.4. All right, what does Genshin Impact look like? They don't even show the rating for Genshin Impact. Oh, and that's a 3.5. So you can see over here, all of these Hoyoverse games literally have an average of a 3.4 to 3.5. And the reason for that, ladies and gentlemen, is because every single time these insane developers decide to implement a new update that makes all of their previous characters useless, when they implement an update where they add in new enemies that are unkillable unless you bring in all of the new units, and that team costs you literally thousands of dollars, and you can't play any of the endgame in these games, you can't play any of the content outside of the story, because these developers have decided to nickel and dime you for every single feature, like you're at a fucking like fucking laundromat where it's like pay to coin operate everything. That's what it feels like now in all three of these games. And that's the reason for why the ratings for these games are so low. You should have seen what the ratings for ZZZ, what the ratings for Honkai Star Rail looked like before things like global passives, before things like 2.x sucking dick, before things like Mavuika and Sitlolly's double banner from hell. The ratings for all of these games are higher, and the ratings of these games only go down when the devs do some giga predatory monetization, some absurd FOMO mechanics. Just remember Natlan and the fact that, oh, your exploration is tied behind banners, dipshit. Right? It's just stuff like that, where you know these developers can do better, they can treat their players much better, adding quality of life at a faster pace, make ZZZ skip button actually useful instead of just only workable on dialogues that you actually do want to hear, and then all of the text in the game is not skippable anyways, and they have literally mountains of that because it's literally AI fed slop garbage that you can tell was written by AI because the sentences don't make any fucking sense. Yeah, it's stuff like that that is preventing these games from winning any fucking awards. That's what's preventing these games from winning any goddamn awards. And Wuthering Waves, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. Yes, they've had some patches where the events have been disappointing. They could use some updates to the endgame design, but those are pretty much the main and honestly the only problems that exist within the game. Not enough places to use your characters. That's not necessarily the hardest fix, as opposed to having broken systems, broken balance that can never be fixed without a massive overhaul sweep to the game. The game has issues, but they're not even close to the same level of the issues that are plaguing other titles. Wuthering Waves is playable. You're just sad that you can't play more. These games are absolutely not playable at fucking all, unless you pay money. And that's really the truth of it. So I hope you have a job, or I hope you have a good unemployment check if you plan on playing these games into the future, because as a free-to-play, good lord. And that's going to be a majority of the people leaving the reviews. As a free-to-play, these have to be now some of the worst fucking games on the market. Ladies and gentlemen, Saint from the future over here. I know we were talking about Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero and the fact that those games are ones that, you know, people aren't really recognizing anymore. I just want to be the first person to tell you that Honkai Star Rail has officially hit the first Hoyo game ever. It has officially hit double-digit viewers on Twitch. Yes, earlier today, it was recorded to have 96. This game, HSR, it had 96 active viewers. Across 44 channels. That meant there was an average of about 2.3 people per channel. You can't have 0 viewers because you count as your own viewer. So that means that was through 44 channels and 96 viewers. There was actually only 45 viewers because the streamer counts. So that's one each. So that's just another circumstance, and that was just a time for us to draw some comparisons about what it looks like when it comes to public perception of a game in the space. That's Google Play. You can clearly see everything's looking pretty good, right? Then, well, you have the natural fact that Wuthering Waves, on top of getting voted in for JP's Player's Choice Award, guys, it also got into, and we've already covered this before, it got into the Player's Choice Award. And as we all know, the Player's Choice Award has some pretty fierce competition. However, the only other gacha game on here is Genshin Impact. And you'll notice, like I said before, the same reasoning that I applied for why games like Honkai Star Rail and ZZZ aren't going to be featured in the Google Play nominations, they're going to be the same reason why they're not going to be featured in the Player's Choice nominations. Because who is happy enough with the state of these titles to be pushing them forward in these awards? On the other hand, there's clearly enough people happy with this title to be pushing it forward into these awards. And you want to know the other thing that's also really interesting? And this, to me, might be a clue for where we might go. We all know that the other game nominated, right? That many are considering to be the real competition for Wuthering Waves. You can see it in the preview over here. It's Uma Musume. Pretty derby. And one thing you noticed is that, little bit interesting that Uma Musume isn't showing up over here. Maybe because it's not really a game. Even JP recognizes it's not really a game. Basically, the way I've described Uma Musume is like, it would be like if Wuthering Waves, if all you could do was roll echoes, and then your characters played themselves. That basically is what Uma Musume is to me. It's if Wuthering Waves only had echo rolling, and then when you started a fight, your characters played themselves. Maybe that's incorrect. Maybe that's a bit of a rough take, but that's the way that I view it. Or it could also be the fact that, well, Uma Musume isn't on PlayStation, that's why it can't be counted over here. Now, we've already covered this part about Uma's absence over here, but what about Uma's absence over here? Where is Uma Musume's presence over here on Player's Choice? A little bit interesting. I kind of view this game, the main competition, as one of those hype titles, right? That managed to have a spot in the limelight on mainstream, on a lot of Twitch channels, in a lot of, in a lot of public discourse. But I do feel like it's one of those games where the flame burned really bright, but I don't necessarily know if the flame is going to burn for that long. And the reason for that is because there's not really like that much of a game to play. I always hear the feedback that it's like, it's like super dry. The gacha monetization is a little bit rough, a couple of things like that. And to me, when I just compare it to a title where you got hundreds of hours of variant gameplay, all of that compared to a management sim, well, guys, I'm going to be honest over here. People going to see the gameplay of this game, then they're going to see the Cartithia ult animation, and they're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, guys, remember, like, just show the gameplay of, like, somebody, like, leveling up the stats and then, like, watching the automated race and then show somebody Cartithia's ultimate. It's just gonna look weird if one game wins over the other. But then again, Balatro won last year, and that game is literally, like, 2D sprites. It looks like Solitaire. So, yeah. I would just say, overall, you can see that public opinion, especially after Wuthering Waves' loss to Balatro last year. I do feel like public opinion in this circumstance, knowing that it's gacha versus gacha, but Uma Musume and Wuthering Waves are like two games that are virtually oceans apart when it comes to gameplay. I do genuinely think that the community feels a lot better heading into this one, feels a good bit more confident. And there are so many reasons for why they should have that confidence. And when you look at the public records, when you look at the places, the awards, you look at the recognition globally, it would be an absolute surprise if Wuthering Waves wasn't at least considered the runner-up, if not the winner. And I think with all of this in their back pocket, I think with all of this known by the Kuro Games developers, and knowing that they're kicking off a lot of that 3.x marketing right now, guys, we all know that the Game Awards has a close relationship with Kuro Games, right? They announced all of their shit for 2.x last time, and they also had Jeff Keighley, the host of the Game Awards, leak Cartithia's kit for us. And, well, they even put out, and let me go make sure I can find it. Here we go. They even made an official post along with the announcement of our 1,000th Astrite regarding the nomination, and then asked us to vote as well. Of course, every single game is going to do this, but I just do feel like everything is set in place for a very, very, very nice little surprise for the player base. And I'm hoping that Kuro Games comes out with some sort of follow-up award, all of that, because the holidays are meant to be a month of celebration, right? There's a reason why 3.0 is launching on Christmas, and I feel like part of Kuro has to know implicitly what the results are going to be, because the way that they've been lining up all of this marketing, the way that they've been lining up all of these releases to perfectly coincide with and build up the proper hype for what's happening on the 11th. Well, I'm just going to be honest, ladies and gentlemen. If it isn't big on the 11th, then what the fuck have they been doing with this lead up to the 11th? So yeah, I'll be looking forward to the actual results. We'll probably be trying to watch the actual Game Awards itself. Unfortunately, this shit lasts like several hours, and they don't usually announce Mobile Game of the Year until like halfway through, until the end. So we'll just have to see when we have to see. The 11th is going to be a very interesting day. So yeah, hopefully all of this research, all of these examples, all of the little snippets that we've dug up today, they've helped reaffirm your confidence heading into this very special date over here. So yeah, I'll see you all next time. Let me know what you thought about this one. Peace out.